Our next question for the jury: are there too many people on the NDIS? Joining us now is Senator Hollie Hughes, Shadow Assistant Minister for the NDIS, and Samantha Connor, Disability Advocate. Hi to you both. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hollie, as we just mentioned, the NDIS was designed for the most severely disabled, and now there's 600,000 Australians on this scheme. Why do you think that there are too many people on the NDIS?
Well, happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter to everyone. Look, there are too many people on the NDIS. The NDIS's intent was for permanent and lifelong disability. We've also got a situation now where we've got 9% of kids between 5 and 9, 7 and 9, that are now on the NDIS. Now, if we're saying that 9% of kids have a permanent and lifelong disability, we've got bigger problems than what's facing the NDIS now. And I think that that's clearly demonstrated by, now there's a big focus on autism and developmental delay, and I think Sam and I both have lived experience in that space. Autism used to look a lot different, and there's a paper being released lately under Ranjan that points to the fact Australia has the fastest growing rate of autism diagnoses in line with when the NDIS came in.
Wow, okay.
So pervasive developmental disorder, developmental delay, all these things that used to exist seem to have disappeared and all gone under autism, but they've also gone under autism level 2, which gets automatic entry to the scheme. It's looking at it from the wrong way, but I do want to also say to those in the autism community, yes, you might be 45% of the participants, it's about 5% of the spend. The most expensive part of the NDIS is supported independent living. So I think when we look at this, we have to look at it holistically, not the numbers, how much we're spending. I would much prefer us to invest early on quality, intensive, best practice early intervention to move more kids off the scheme, to move people into a lower level of supports when they get older, rather than throwing our hands up in the air when people with truly intellectual disabilities, cognitive disabilities and other disabilities don't get that early intervention, don't get that support, and then require very expensive independent living plans when they get older.
Samantha, after just hearing that then, so 600,000 participants right now, how is it sustainable at its current level?
It's a funny question when we're talking about sustainability, because it really depends on the political climate, how much money the government of the day has, and it also depends on community attitudes. We never ever ask, you know, how many people should be in Medicare, because Medicare is for all Australians. And so it's a little bit of a weird debate, because if we're saying that, you know, the NDIS is for all Australians, Medicare is for all Australians, then, you know, do we just say that it's only for people who have very severe forms of cancer, or, you know, that other people shouldn't gain access to the health system?
Okay, then there's been a lot of concern about, say, the eligibility criteria, and I think you just mentioned the autism and developmental delay accounting for 45% of participants. That's a lot of people on the scheme for autism. Do you think that there needs to be some sort of review as to who is technically eligible and who is not? How does it work?
It's currently under debate. We had a big discussion about independent assessments a few years ago, and that was canned by government at the time, which is a good thing. They're looking at introducing assessments again within the actual process that they're proposing. So they're saying that it won't be about primary and secondary diagnosis. You know, Hollie's talking about kids with level 2 autism, you know, that will be gotten rid of. I think it's a mistake. I think there's an issue there. But I think the NDIS has been run badly for a long time, and it's had some difficulties for a long time. And it really has been about cost cutting, petty pinching, and a lot of rhetoric as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say though, but everyone, when they look at it, they look at it from the participant perspective, and they're looking at participants and saying, you know, they're spending too much money. It's the participants. There's too many participants. The biggest problem in the NDIS in many, many areas are the providers. The providers that charge at the top of the price guide. If I was in charge, the very first thing I would be doing is getting rid of the price guide, which is currently under the purview in the Act of the board. Get rid of the price guide, because if you are Joe Blow on the street and want to go see a speech therapist because your child needs some help, they will be charged in some instances around half of what the NDIS price guide is. So if you're a small business speech therapy, who are you going to see? NDIS participants. That's where the overspending on many, many cases this is coming from,
All right.
over structural issues that aren't being addressed in this reform.
Let's get some juror feedback. Sandra, how do you feel about the current numbers in the NDIS?
I think there's a lot of overdiagnosis of kids. I think there's a lot of people are happy if their child gets a level 2 autistic because they're going to get the funding. When years ago it wasn't like that, and the fund, and your point about the cost of it. I'm a physio. I used to work in early intervention, and my friend, she was a speechy, and she said, "Oh, you've got to join the NDIS. I can charge $150 an hour."
Yep.
And I said, "How can you possibly live with yourself charging a poor person who's a mum whose child is really struggling $150 an hour so that you can provide that service, and travelling time too? It's gone through."
Don't get me started on that one. The double dipping on travel time.
Yeah.
Oh, as an old country mum and participant now in the city, what they used to charge in travel are rort. Absolute rort.
Samantha, what do you think about
There's
that?
an assumption there that people are getting the support that they need, though. And so for early intervention, I have a good friend from Southwest Autism Network in Bunbury in Western Australia. And most of the kids that she sees have under $5,000 or they have a $0 plan. So they're not actually getting any money in their plan. They're being told, here's your plan, go and connect up with your informal supports, which don't exist in the country, you know. And so, you know, the assumption that there's some sort of huge handout to people, especially for children who are autistic children, is you know, when you look at the actual stats, it's not borne out, as Hollie says. You know, it's really a small amount of funding.
There's a lot to consider, but look, you've both had your say. It is time to call on the jury. Jurors, you have 10 seconds to deliberate. Are too many people on the NDIS?
There's too many people. She said not enough control on what the providers are charging. You know, garden maintenance, house cleaning. She said there's a lot of
Okay, time is up. What is the jury's verdict? Okay, we've got 3 no's and the rest of you say yes, there are too many people on the NDIS. Damien, what do you think?
I think there are, but I think through this plan, the changes, Hollie, as she mentioned, I think we need to look at the eligibility tighter. Right, and it's not about not spending the money. We have the money available, right? We have money in the budget, obviously, but are we spending it in the right places? Are the providers, as we said, charging too much? Well, we know there's gouging happening, right? So we need to stop that. This is not a put your hand out and take the money from the purse situation. So I think if we look at the eligibility, you know, it's not about not providing care for our people. We've got Medicare, so maybe throw a few more dollars back into the Medicare world and help out the broader population as well. So I think there's a number of aspects that we as a government, the government need to look at, is how do we improve it for all Australians?
Yeah, there's a few different aspects, absolutely. Pamela, you said that there are too many people. Why?
Well, I felt it should be for those with profound disabilities. That's how it was set up. So I agree. I think, you know, we should be sending out perhaps some of the other people who don't meet that criteria into different areas. And I think the oversight and administration's terrible at the moment.
Look, it's a real tough one, isn't it? It's difficult to argue either way. But it's been great to chat to you both, Hollie Hughes and Samantha Connor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.